Hello, and welcome to K-12 Classroom Activities Build a Nucleus Simulation, presented by the American Nuclear Society. This evening's event is part of our educator training program, specifically developed for elementary through high school teachers. I am Janice Lindegard, Program Specialist for ANS. I'm pleased to introduce this webinar on an engaging new nuclear science classroom exploration. Before I introduce our moderator and presenter, I'd like to cover a couple of quick notes regarding today's event. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A. It should be at the bottom of your screen. We will attempt to address as many questions as possible. The event will be recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed to event registrants tomorrow. Certificates of attendance for today's event are available on request. Please see the chat for contact information. And it is askanything@ans.org. For the educators in our audience, please let us know if you'd like an ANS member to visit your classroom virtually or in real life. Just send your request to askanything@ans.org. And members, ANS's new Nuclear Ambassadors program offers members free training in K-12 nuclear education outreach. Contact Uchenna Ezibe if you are interested in training for your organization. And I will drop both my and his email addresses in the chat. And finally, we ask that all participants adhere to the ANS Code of Ethics and Respectful Behavior Policy, which can be found at ans.org. With that out of the way, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Jason Donev. Jason Donev is a tenured faculty member at the University of Calgary and an adjunct professor at the University of Regina. He leads the world's largest and most utilized energy education resource for the public, Energy Education at .ca. I'm not used to Canadian. I'm sorry about that. Dr. Donev teaches several energy courses, including courses that introduce nuclear energy and energy in general to non-technical audiences. He has received local and national awards for teaching and outreach. As a reviewer for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Dr. Donev works to help people understand nuclear power's role in providing reliable energy without emitting greenhouse gases. He leads a team that researches how next-generation nuclear reactors have the potential to contribute to fighting climate change. This evening's presenter was a student of Dr. Donev's. Welcome, Dr. Donev. Please introduce us to our presenter.
Thank you, Janice. So it's a great pleasure of mine to introduce Luisa Vargas Suarez, who recently graduated here at the University of Calgary. She majored in energy science, chemistry, and computer science, and was one of the developers on the Energy Education website. She was the one who actually helped us make it a multilingual website. We had previously just had English, and we now have English, Spanish, and French, which has been a very exciting development and was quite difficult. So I'm very grateful for Luisa's hard work on that. We had a funny idea of using the Build a Nucleus PhET simulation that had started off as Build an Atom, but we wanted to focus in on the nucleus where things really happen. And Luisa did a quick and dirty version of that, coded it up, and we put it out on the internet. We put it on Twitter, actually, back when X was known as Twitter, and we tagged the people at PhET, which led to a wonderful international collaboration and has led to Luisa presenting this simulation at conferences in more than one country, winning several awards for her presentation, and the top undergraduate research prize 2 consecutive years in a row for the Canadian Nuclear Society, and also the top undergraduate woman in Canadian nuclear education from Women in Nuclear. She now works at PhET until her upcoming master's degree begins, which I'm quite excited to hear about as well. And she hopes to begin a career in the nuclear energy industry after graduation. I also wanted to say that one of the things that my research group does is we talk a lot about the stories about nuclear. And of course, the most exciting story that has come out recently, which has been watched by millions of people now, is the Oppenheimer movie. And I will be giving a talk on the Oppenheimer movie coming up soon on, oh geez, I just dropped the date, March 6th, I believe. No. Anyway, we'll post a link to that talk in the chat right there, should you be interested in hearing me talk about the Oppenheimer movie. Luisa's PhET simulation has now been translated into dozens of languages and been used over 1 million times. It was an essential part of the International Nuclear Science Week, where we launched the current version with that, and I'm excited that you're here to hear Luisa talk about the Build a Nucleus simulation, which is freely available for anyone with an internet connection. And I do want to remind people that the talk today will be recorded and you'll be sent a copy. Luisa, please take it away.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, so I am a recent grad from the University of Calgary. Just gonna share my screen here. So I recently graduated from the University of Calgary. While working with Jason, I developed the Build a Nucleus simulation. And now I'm working at PhET, where for only a few months until I begin my upcoming master's. So what this simulation does is it dives deep into the inner workings of the nucleus, and it teaches fundamental nuclear science concepts to understand the chart of the nuclides, which is this colorful table here in the middle. So as we know, it's a table of all the isotopes in all the world. And as we know, isotopes are very useful in today's society. They are used in space exploration, in nuclear power, in cancer treatment, and other medical applications. And these are just a few examples. So because of that—
Just to interrupt a moment, could you unshare and reshare your screen real quick? We're getting a bit of an error.
Oh, shoot. Yes.
I think that's one of the reasons that somebody raised their hand in the group.
Yes. I will share everything again. Is it better now?
That's better, thank you. The thing you moved out of the way fixed it.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. So yeah, the chart of the nuclides is a table of all the isotopes in all the world. And because of this, it is essential to understand it and understand how these isotopes work. So these isotopes have various applications, and the aim of this simulation is to teach about the fundamentals of nuclear science and how these isotopes interact. Currently, there's a lack of resources for learning nuclear science in an interactive and digestible way, and especially for younger audiences, such as those in high school or university who want to explore future careers in nuclear, or even people who are already in the nuclear industry, but they came from another field of study, so they're not familiar with these concepts. And because of that, we chose, Jason explained the story of how this beautiful collaboration came up with them and how we developed the Build a Nucleus simulation with them while I was working with Jason. This PhET program is a world-renowned program that develops simulations on math and science concepts that are based on education research on the most effective way that students learn, which is through exploration. And these simulations are freely available online and translated by volunteer translators to various languages. So anyone around the world that has access to the internet would be able to learn fundamental nuclear science in an engaging way. So the simulation is made up of two screens. It first focuses on the half-life, decays, and decay paths that isotopes can undergo. And the second screen would then introduce the chart of the nuclides through its relationship with the periodic table. The second screen would also link to the complete chart of the nuclides, by which, at this point, after a user has interacted and discovered various aspects of the simulation, should hopefully the complete chart be more comprehensible. So let's get into the first screen. And that is the complete chart I would link to. So in general, the simulation is governed by the nucleus that is currently built. The screens are interactable through adding and removing protons, either with the arrows, as we can see here, or through sending protons and neutrons in by just clicking on them. And this, whenever you change the nucleus, this would change the nuclide that is created. So it would change the respective half-life readouts, the available decays, and also the symbol that represents it. So what is a nuclide? A nuclide is an atomic species that is defined by how many protons and neutrons it would have in its nucleus. And depending on the number of protons and neutrons it has, the nuclide can either be stable or unstable. The first screen goes up to plutonium-240, which is made up of 94 protons and 146 neutrons. Because there are so many, we added these query parameters so you can directly set the nuclide you want to create. However, we should note that this simulation only lets you build nuclides that exist naturally on Earth, not those that are, for example, made in a lab. So an example being something with 2 protons or 3 protons or 30 protons, that even though you would like to set that, that cannot be built. So let's go into the website now. So the first screen has a decay screen, and it focuses on the decay. The half-life is seen up here, and the available decays are seen up here whenever you change any of the nuclides that you built. As we can see, there are both unstable nuclides and stable nuclides. So this is, for example, an unstable nuclide, and these nuclides have a half-life of infinity in a way because they never decay. And unstable nuclides, as we saw a little bit ago, they decay by undergoing these decay processes where they either emit a particle or they change one of their particles through emitting these other particles. Because the half-life of unstable nuclides can be so varied, for example, it goes from -24 seconds all the way to 10 to the 24 seconds, we added this half-life timescale in the log scale to better understand these values. There is also an informational pop-up timescale here, which would give meaning to what each of these values represent. So they can be, as I said, they have a wide range. So they can be as small as the time it takes for light to cross a nucleus, or even as large as various human lifespans. As we change the ratio of protons and neutrons here, we can begin to see certain patterns where we can see more specific decays. So, for example, if you have much more protons, you're going to have much more beta plus decays. And if you have more neutrons, you're going to have more beta minus decays. And for smaller nuclides, the same relationship applies, but we also have more proton emission for smaller nuclides and more neutron emissions for smaller nuclides, wherever they have an excess of neutrons. We can also see, really in general, the concept of stability on this screen, because as we change these things here, the half-life changes in return. And another small detail is that we also see the nuclear notation up in this symbol box, and this would be used in the second screen to demonstrate decay equations of unstable nuclides. So stability trends begin emerging as we play around with the bigger nuclides, or even with the smaller nuclides. So smaller nuclides generally are stable with a 1-to-1 ratio of neutrons to protons, while larger nuclides are more stable when you have higher neutron to proton ratios. For example, with this mercury isotope that we're seeing here, it's usually around 120 neutrons where you have more stability. So this half-life error is getting closer to being more stable until it does become stable, but then if you add too many neutrons, it goes back to being more unstable. Another thing that we can see in the screen is that when there are an even number of nucleons, there exist more stable nuclides as well, compared to when there are an odd number of nucleons. Now let's get into the second screen. So this screen would build up on the idea of stability through the nucleon energy levels, which are the levels that make up the nuclear shell model. We can also see how magic numbers are related to these levels and the introduction of the chart of the nuclides through its relationship with the periodic table. You can see as you add more neutrons, you move you move up and down through the chart of the nuclides. And as you add more protons, you move left and right through the chart of the nuclides. So your isotopes would be your rows, and they make up your chart, and your columns would be made up of isotones. This screen goes up to a maximum of 10 protons and 12 neutrons, which would be neon 22. And we limited to these values because we want to show only a small partial version of the nuclear chart, which is why the name is called of this screen is chart intro. And this screen also has query parameters that can be set if you want your students to access a specific nuclide. Something that I missed here earlier was that also we can see the concept of magic numbers here. And magic numbers are defined where you have a full energy level. So with these smaller nuclides, your first couple magic numbers are 2, 8, and 20. And these are relevant because these help with your stability. If you have singly magic numbers, you're more stable. Or if you have doubly magic numbers, which is both protons and neutrons that have their energy levels full, then you are even more stable generally. So let's get into the second screen now. In the second screen, you can see that as you add and remove protons, your energy level bar changes color as a way to represent that you are filling up your energy level. And then once you are completely full, your energy level bar becomes bold in a way. As well, we can also see that you can only interact with valence nucleons because those have the highest potential energy. Your inner nucleons are not interactive. In highlighting the magic numbers, we can visually see why or how the magic numbers increase stability. For example, if we go to helium.
Luisa, we have the dark bar again. Could you move it, please?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So if you go to helium-4, that is a doubly magic number because you have 2 protons and 2 neutrons, completely full levels here, and that is stable. The same can be seen in this other example, oxygen-16, where you have 8 protons and 8 neutrons, again, another full level. And as well, you have more stable nuclides, and in general, more nuclides that exist here. So having these nucleon energy levels and these magic numbers really are the same concept as the electron energy levels that you may have previously known from previous chemistry background. They all follow the same patterns. These are all quantized energy states. And in having these separate, that would clarify the misconception that nucleons are all together in the nucleus, because they rather each have their separate respective nucleon energy levels. So we can also see the decay equation in here. Whenever you go to a unstable nuclide, you can see the decay direction that the nuclide would move in, and a visual decay equation using this chemical notation we saw from the previous screen. Again, in this screen, you can also decay, so you can see how in the decay you move across your chart and how your nucleons change and move throughout your energy levels. This percentage here represents the probability of how likely this nuclide is to undergo this specific decay. And the big concept here is that we can understand this table through its relationship with a periodic table. So adding neutrons and removing neutrons would keep us in the same element because your element is defined by your proton number. And adding and removing protons, that would change our element, but then we are remaining in with the same isotones. Once all of these concepts of magic numbers, decay, and the decay equation in your chart of the nuclides is understood, then you can explore the full nuclide chart by clicking here. And even though this might have seemed huge and not as easily comprehensible at the beginning, we can see that really the Build a Nucleus simulation introduced this smaller version of the chart of the nuclides. And this full version still has the same decay and stability color coding that we previously shown. It also has the chemical symbol of the nuclide you are currently on, and also the decay arrows that indicate all the possible decay paths of where your nuclide can move on the chart of the nucleus. Chart of the nuclides. And previously we have only shown the most likely decay path, but now we are showing all possible decay paths. So once these nuclear science concepts are better understood, we can expand upon this knowledge to understand maybe how reactions happen in used nuclear fuel. How do those isotopes in their decay and become more stable as they move inside towards the belt of stability? So the Build a Nucleus simulation is a powerful learning tool that encourages everyone to get excited about nuclear science and to learn about all these various concepts about half-life, decay types, stability, and the nuclear shell model. In understanding all these concepts, one can also learn about the chart of the nuclides, which is essential to nuclear science. And I have shown again here the QR code to the simulation so you can access it. And it is made up of these 2 screens. Because we want everyone to learn about nuclear science, we have the simulation is already distributed through PhET. It's currently on their website, and it's also on the energy education website. This simulation is geared more towards people at the high school level age or older, because you need to understand the periodic table. Because it's available online and translated to many languages, anyone from anywhere around the world can learn about nuclear science. This simulation is also, we're planning to distribute it through these following organizations, through the Women in Nuclear organization, Canadian Nuclear Society, the ANS, which is what we're currently doing. And this year, it was also a part of Nuclear Science Week back in October. So we are just happy to share this simulation so that everyone around the world can learn about nuclear science and can access the simulation and understand the fundamental basics of the chart of the nuclides. Thank you. And at this point, I will take any questions.
Well, Luisa, first of all, let me say thank you for doing this. I continue to be very proud of your your excellent work, and I very much appreciate you presenting in this forum, which I have never been here before, and none of my students have ever been here before. So it's quite an honor for me as a teacher to see how far you've come over the years you worked with me. So thank you for that, and your former classmates who are sitting here with me as well are also sending their congratulations. Taking a look at the questions, can you explain the island of stability to the nuclide chart? My students know that when new elements are created in particle accelerators, they're looking for islands of stability. Their textbook does not explain this very well. Luisa, would you like me to cover that question?
Yes, though I can show, well, we don't.
Go ahead and pull it up and we'll.
Okay. Yes.
Also, Victor Lopez Castellanos says, great work. Evelyn Rave says, thank you for your time and work. Greetings from Spain.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So if you can click, you can scroll in a bit. Yeah, go ahead and talk about what you've got, and I'll add to it.
Yes, so this is the complete chart of the nuclides, and the island of stability would be up in this top corner. We don't have it in this simulation, but it is where they call it the island of stability because it's not in this center value of stability, which is where generally, if we look at the energy of these, all the nuclides would decay in towards the middle, losing their potential energy, becoming more stable. So there would be an island of stability here that would have lower potential energy where nuclides would be.
What I would add to that is that what we're looking for is an island of relative stability. It's not that things with more protons and neutrons would actually be stable. It's that they are comparatively stable. Luisa, can you go back to the two-dimensional view, please? So if you zoom in just a little bit. Yeah. If you want to, so above the 146, there's a single yellow, so the number 146, down and to the left, down to the left. Yeah, so, okay, now the first yellow dot above that.
Yeah.
That one right there, yeah. So that's uranium-238. Uranium-238, and then if you click 3 to the left of that, yes, that one, yeah, there you go. Yeah, click that one. That's uranium-235. And then if you can click the one 2 squares down and 1 to the left. Yeah, that one. That's thorium-232. These 3 nuclides are very stable. So that's the sort of thing we're looking for. Each of these nuclides has half-lives of hundreds of millions or even billions of years. And these are a particularly good, energetically favorable collection of protons and neutrons. So they wind up lasting for a very, very long time. The island of stability that people talk about is another island of proposed nuclei that are further up and to the right, but they won't actually be stable. They will decay. They just won't decay quite as quickly as everything else that's up there, because most of the stuff up there decays very, very rapidly. Hopefully that answered that person's question. Okay, next question comes from Donovan Porterfield. I've seen some reports that the nucleus of some radionuclides partitioning into groups of helium-4, 2 neutrons, 2 protons. Has there been any consideration of picturing such resulting nuclei? Louise, you want to talk about the limited scope of PhET model?
This one or
The one you were working on.
Yes, this one we limited the isotopes that we are showing here only to around here, plutonium-240, because we wanted to accurately show all the decays that occur. So some isotopes here, for example, this decays diagonally to the left. So that was the only clean cuts we could find that still shows the vast majority of nuclides.
I think I would add to that. One of the things that PhET does really well, which is why I wanted to work with them on this project. So the screen that we were just looking at was actually built by a different student of mine, Jacqueline. The screen that we're looking at now was built by Luisa. And one of the things that PhET is really good at is it's very good at focusing in on a particular learning goal and then creating a simulation that specifically goes for that learning goal. So there's plenty of topics within nuclear physics that are not addressed here, some of which I've got other students working on. One of the next ones we're looking at is the liquid drop model and the semi-empirical mass formula that actually gives some idea of why the shape of the belt of the stability is what it is, but that's beyond the scope of this particular project. The subdivisions of the two proton, 2 neutron, the sort of sub-alpha particles is a quasi-nuclear particle is more advanced than the audience that this is intended for would want to deal with. So that's not something we're looking at. I hope that answered that question. Louise, the next question from Julie Ezold is, are there any plans to go beyond plutonium-240?
There could be if we find another clean cut in these decays, but currently there are no plans to do that.
Yeah, I remember you were telling me, Louisa, that plutonium-240 just seemed like a good place to stop because you're not getting into the spontaneous fissions that you have with like fermium, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Harder to represent.
Yeah, the spontaneous fission was something we were very, very definitely trying to avoid. Next question is there a favorite lesson plan that goes perfectly with this simulation?
Yes, there are teacher tips currently available with this simulation on the website. So you can, in accessing the simulation, there are teacher resources here. So you just create an account and can access them, or even activities already available for these simulations. Or teachers can also submit their own. So yeah.
one of the things that I am hoping that this presentation will inspire, since Janice talked up about how the American Nuclear Society has a great group of high school teachers, and I guess some middle school teachers as well, that people could actually build this and contribute. And this would be a further contribution that the American Nuclear Society could make, that PhET would then make available through their website. So this would be a way to get some of the ANS expertise mobilized onto a site where millions of people are using this platform. So I guess the answer is we've got some, but we would welcome more. Next question is, why do they call them magic numbers when they are related to the numbers that have to do with the full energy levels?
I'm not really sure about that.
So Marie Gopal-Meyer, who was the Nobel Prize winning physicist, she was the second woman to win a Nobel Prize in physics, actually, after Marie Curie. And then we went quite a while without having another one, unfortunately. But Marie Gopal-Meyer was studying the structure of nuclei and the relative binding energies that went into them. And there was something that seemed a little magical about the particular configuration of 2, 8, 20, 28, 50, 82. So because it was very good, it seemed a bit like it was magic, and I believe the word came something from that sense, but that's always just been sort of what I've assumed. I don't know that I've ever actually read that anywhere. And then Hank Straub says, as a BSA counselor, this would be very useful for the nuclear merit badge. I would answer once again to reiterate what Luisa had said before. BSA, I believe, is Boy Scouts of America. We're up in Canada, so we don't have that. We have Scouts Canada, which I think is a related organization. If the BSA would like to put together some sort of lesson plan, PhET would once again be very willing and interested in posting that so that other troop leaders could potentially benefit from that expertise. Louise, is that your understanding that PhET will not just do education within schools, but also things like science, museums, or Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts,
Exactly.
and so forth?
Yes. So we very much welcome it.
So excellent idea, reaching into the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. I don't actually know if Girl Scouts have merit badges. I've always assumed so, but
Girl Scouts do have badges. This is Janice. Girl Scouts do have badges, but they also have something called a patch. And a patch is for a fun activity. The badges are fun, but they're a lot of work. So ANS created a patch specifically for the Girl Scouts because there was the Boy Scout merit badge. And I dropped the link to it into the chat. We have all kinds of resources on our website that are related to the Girl Scouts that Boy Scouts could use too. There's a lot of virtual things that are on there because we put it together during COVID.
as many things were during COVID. So while we're waiting for the next one to, somebody else has typed in, great work, thanks for sharing. While we're waiting for the next question, my question for you, Luisa, is what was the most fun thing about designing this chart? I know you've spent years working on this, and I want to take a moment to just make sure that the audience knows that this was years and years of work. We started off with something incredibly basic and simple, and you spent years working on this now. So what was the most fun thing you discovered, or that you coded, or that you were able to see as a result of this simulation? What?
Yeah. Well, yes, this did take the whole 2 years to develop, and even a bit before that with the demo we did of this. So I think really in all that time spent, a lot of what was fun with it was in coming up with these ways to show how the nucleus reacts to, like, how these decays affect the nucleus, and coding the particles flying away, or coming up with ideas of them coming in, or things like that. So that was definitely a lot of fun. Especially, I think, when we got to much bigger nuclides like uranium or plutonium or something, when you just decay all the way down. Maybe I can show it. I'll just put in here. So these are the query parameters that I showed earlier, where you can set specific protons and neutrons. And then you just decay, and particles just go all the way down until they become stable. So it was definitely very rewarding and a lot of fun in creating that and seeing how all of this visually happens, because you can't really in real life in a lab or something just do this immediately, but at least here you can virtually see a nucleus decaying and becoming another isotope.
That's a lot of fun. That was a lot of the fun for me with the original chart of the nuclides as well, just seeing it bounce from one to the next. But seeing an actual model of a nucleus spit out particles is really, as you said, just a lot of fun. There's also a question: does the simulation work with the IAEA chart of nuclides or some other application? And what about updates?
Well, actually, we are using the data from the IAEA, so we're using this same data source when we got the decay data. So we do plan on updating these in the future as the database there is updated with all the decays. But it doesn't work like with it at the same time or things like that. We just downloaded the data from the database and use that to get these values.
If I can add a little bit to that, what I can tell you is that we would like to keep updating this. We have other ideas. We run out of funding far faster than we run out of ideas, or even run out of students who really want to sit and code. There are lots and lots of ideas, and the NDS in SDF data could do lots and lots of fun stuff. We have a number of cool things that we would love to show, we would love to share. But it would involve funding nuclear education, which is, of course, always a bit of a challenge. And that's my hobby horse. The fission products is actually one of the simulations that is currently on the drawing board. I even have a student who wants to work on it, but that one proved to be more difficult than this one. We thought this was the better one to start with. Janice, you had a final question. Dr. Katie Huff, who leads the DOE, the relevant part of the DOE, posted a video recently talking about staying curious. And Janice, if I could just yield the floor to you so you can ask your question directly about inspiring people who want to code.
Sure. I just wondered, there are so many kids in school who learn to code, and there's a lot of support for it. I was wondering what you would say to younger students, like maybe middle schoolers or high schoolers, about learning code, and how you got to the point where you wanted to do something like this, because this looks like a lot of work to me.
Yes,
I can confirm it was a lot of work.
Yeah. Really, this was actually more so the end or second project after working with Jason, because I just started on the website doing like reviewing web pages or some data visualizations. But the way it got to this point really is what I'd say to these students is, as you're coding these things, you see how you can create all these things, and really it's up to your imagination, whatever you want to code. There's libraries and resources out there that are publicly and freely available, same as PhET. That's how we built the first prototype, just using PhET code that was available online. So I'd say really the way I see coding is you can take these things that already exist out there, like a number panel, protons, neutrons, and create what's in your imagination. So really I see it more as you can create whatever you want once you know how to code. So that would be a motivation for them.
Great, thank you.
I think that's a great place to bring this to a close. Luisa, you are an inspiration. Your dedication, hard work, and vision taught me so much. It is such an honor to work with kids today, because I got to say the upcoming generation is just amazing, and I feel very privileged to be allowed to work with them. And Luisa, you are a stellar example of that. Your work on this has touched millions of people who otherwise would have no, or at least much less, understanding of nuclei. And I, for one, am very moved that you did this work, and I'm very grateful. Oh, wait, I'm getting can we answer one last question? I did not realize there were more questions coming up. Yes. So when we look at calculating average atomic mass, we use the percent abundance of stable isotope in the calculation. So what is considered a stable isotope when there are isotopes that are stable that also decay? How long do their half-lives have to be included?
Yes, for this, that's where we had a conversation about this, because we said something can live very long, but still be considered unstable. So that's why with the log scale, that was our aim, to show that even though something, it's really, I think, around this limit where we chose, or based on the data too, because that would it gave data there that's classified these are as stable or unstable. So that's our aim here in showing that even though something has a half-life about the age of the universe, it will still decay eventually. Even though you might think that lives so long, it should be stable. So that's what I can say to that. I don't know. Do you have anything to add, Jason?
Yeah, I sent you a thing in the chat with the other simulation.
Yes.
So there is a different simulation that actually explores this a bit more. So this is the isotope and atomic mass simulation, which PhET did, but neither Luisa nor I were involved with. And it does look at the whole idea of isotopes and atomic mass and so forth. The long enough to be considered is usually a matter of what is found in nature. So when you have something like carbon in nature is a mix of carbon-12, carbon-13, carbon-14. And then the isotopic abundance is what yields a particular mass. So this simulation actually addresses that. That was outside the scope of the chart of nuclides. This simulation is also available in dozens of languages, and PhET would appreciate if ANS were to advertise this one as well, because they would they like their products to get used. There was also a question about how long do these simulations take to build, and the answer is it usually takes 2 to 3 years to build these. And we're usually paying somebody's salary, so it's it's a few tens of thousands of dollars. It's always the as a machinist friend of mine said, I can build whatever you can afford. So when we have more money, there's more bells and whistles, and the design winds up being better. And when we have $10,000 to hire a student for one summer to do something, then what we do is we put out something that a student can do in one summer. So we certainly get useful work out of students over the course of a summer building simulations. This one, however, took years, and I'm not going to say how much we pay Luisa, but we had to pay her for years, and she was worth it. Yeah, it is useful info for setting up a grant. And happy to chat about that offline if that's of further interest. Carolyn Cardelio was just saying thank you so much. All right, well, thank you to Janice for setting this up. Thank you all for coming. We do appreciate your attention and your interest in educating people about nuclear. Luisa, I'll go ahead and clap for you because I don't think you can hear the attendees. Oh, go ahead, Nico. Yes, we here in Jason's office are excited for this. And Luisa, unless you have anything else, we'll turn it back to Janice.
That was a great presentation. I hope everyone's excited about using it. I'm excited about trying to use this. My degrees are in English and teaching, so I never got quite to that level. Please let us know if you have any questions. You can send them to askanything@ans.org. And we'll be having another webinar on March 7th about the tools of the nuclear scientist. We'll be talking to some scientists from Los Alamos and Sandia and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories about the really intriguing equipment they use to test for non-proliferation issues and other. And we'll be having a webinar on March 21st about trade careers in nuclear science and technology. And our panel is all women in celebration of Women's History Month. And again, thank you very much for attending.